You know, I've always wanted to have a pond, and when we bought this property a few years ago, we had 12 acres here, and we decided there's enough room to build a pond. So we started talking about it, and we wanted this pond to be not only good for fishing, but also good to swim in for the kids, and also for wildlife. We wanted deer to be able to come in and drink out of the pond here. And so last year in July, I hired a local large equipment operator, Dave O'Berry. He's right from this area and fantastic on big equipment. And we started the whole process of digging this here pond.
This is your swinger travel lever, depending on where you're engaged here.
Okay.
This is your drag hoist and your corresponding drag brake. This is your lift hoist and your lift brake. It's a 1975 Northwest, built in Milwaukee. It was originally shipped to Orange County, Florida. It cleaned irrigation ditches. Somewhere in the 90s, Joe Frazier from St. Charles bought it and its twin and brought them both up here. After Joe had it, Gordon Eastlick bought it, and he lived over by Langsburg, and that's who I purchased it from. It weighs somewhere between 75 and 80,000 pounds. It's 11 and a half feet wide. There's 50 foot of boom on it, and I can reach 60 to 65 feet with it.
And how big is the bucket?
Yard and a quarter. The disadvantage is they don't get around real well. You gotta have a lot of space for them. The advantage is the size of the bucket and its reach. It'll outdig a long reach excavator of comparable size just because you can put so much more in the bucket. Everything is friction operated. So when you let go of a lever, it doesn't stop unless you put the brake on. An excavator, when you let go of the lever, it stops doing what it's doing. In a dragline, when you let go of the lever, it keeps doing whatever it wants to do until told otherwise. So you're always moving, feet and hands. You're either lifting with the hoist if you're cutting up a slope, or cutting down a slope, you're using your brake pedal to hold it and let it down by gravity. There's three main levers across the front. You've got your swing, your drag drum, your hoist drum, and then you've got two foot pedals, a drag and a hoist brake. So they all have to work together. A drag line needs to set fairly level because it is a free swinger. There's no hydraulic motor in there to stop it. Again, it just, if you let go of the lever, it'll just swing until it stops. So you want to set flat, or you can counteract your swing, of course, to bring it back. But I've had long reach excavators, and they're nice, they're fast, they duck under tree limbs, but I just like to run the crane. I like the noise, I like big noisy things. My grandpa had one, my uncle had one. My dad was always interested in heavy equipment, so. My first one was a 3/4 yard Lorraine, and then I've had 3 Model 41s. This is the third. I've had a 65 and a 60-foot long reach. The Lorraine, the controls were all backwards. A Northwest is a right-hand swing. Your right hand is your swing lever. The Lorraine and everybody else, you swing with your left hand. And the Lorraine, actually, you push the levers forward instead of pull them towards you. So it was totally backwards. But we want a water source first, and then we want clay to keep the water in. Had we hit sand down there, it would have just sucked the water out the bottom. Clay makes a nice pond because it retains your water. But the big thing is to have water somewhere near you. That's why we dug your test holes. The first test hole was all clay, but it was dry. This one that we're using, the water was down about 18 inches. And it's maintained, well, it's dropped some in the drought, but it hasn't dried right up completely. So we're hoping there's water there. It's not very often you'll hit a real live spring, but you can, and they'll fill immediately, within days. But most of the time they take your fall rains and your spring runoff.
So before we got started digging the pond, Dave wanted to dig some test holes, which is a great idea in any pond. He dug a test hole in a field over here, one behind me, and then one that ends up being in the corner of the pond now. And the first 2 were complete clay. There was nothing else. There was no water seeping in, maybe just a little trickle out the side, but nothing for groundwater. So we knew that those were just going to be holes in the ground that caught water. They didn't really have a whole lot coming into them. But right over here behind me, we did find one that had, as soon as he started digging, filled up with water. We knew there's a lot of groundwater in this area and kind of figured that was going to be the spot to dig, and it was. But after that, Dave brought over his Dragline excavator, and it is one of the coolest things to watch dig. These guys are artists with this big piece of machinery. You've got to control so much stuff at one time. It's amazing to watch him dig and complete these angles that he had to complete to make the perfect slope. Let's just sit back and watch him dig. So this whole project is going to be a whole series of videos. We've got all sorts of stuff planned. I've got a windmill on order. I've got fish coming. We've got other stuff. We're going to be planting some vegetation around it to make habitat for the fish. We've already done some fish habitat, but last year we had a drought. So in July we dug the pond and it just never filled. We just had no water in the ground. I was able to drive my tractor all over this property where normally that's not the case. So we were able to get a lot of other projects done. But now that we've got some groundwater, it's starting to fill up about 1.5 inches, 2 inches a day, and we're doing pretty good. So stay tuned. We're going to have lots of videos on this pond. We want to have a fish stocking. We're going to put up a windmill for aeration. We're going to do some habitat work for the fish and all sorts of stuff planned for this pond. So stay tuned. Make sure you like and subscribe so we can do more of this kind of content.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to my daddy's channel.